The streets of Manila were alive with noise. Jeepneys rattled past, their engines coughing black smoke into the humid air. Street vendors shouted, their voices rising above the honks of impatient drivers. Children darted between the crowd, chasing after a worn-out basketball or tugging at their mothers' skirts for food. It was the kind of chaos that never ended, the kind of soundscape that swallowed voices whole. And yet, in the middle of that restless city, there was a sound that somehow broke through it all. It was a boy's voice, clear, pure, achingly tender. On a street corner near an old church, 12-year-old Miguel sat on a small wooden stool. His clothes were faded, the kind that had been washed too many times to hold their color. His shoes were mismatched, one slightly larger than the other, and both had holes in the soles. In his lap rested a guitar so beaten and cracked that it looked like it had been pulled from a trash heap. One of the tuning pegs was held together by a rubber band, and the body bore scars of scratches and chipped wood. Yet when Miguel's fingers touched the strings, the instrument seemed to transform. The notes that spilled out were soft, fragile, and honest, like whispers from a soul too old for such a young boy. His voice rose above the chaos of the street, weaving through the noise of engines, footsteps, and market calls. People stopped, not many, just a few, but those who did were drawn by something they couldn't quite explain. Miguel sang not with his eyes, because his world had long since been dark, but with his heart. He had been blind since birth, for as long as he could remember. Light had only been something others described to him. His mother once told him about the colors of a Manila sunset, painting pictures with words, skies brushed with orange and pink, clouds glowing gold as the sun dipped behind the horizon. Miguel couldn't see it, but somehow when he sang, people said they could hear that sunset in his voice. Each lyric he sang carried weight. It wasn't just a song, it was his story. A story of hunger, of loneliness, of nights spent listening to his mother cough in their one-room home. A story of a child who had never seen the world but somehow understood its beauty and its pain better than most who walked it freely. At his feet sat a small tin can, dented and scratched. Inside, a few coins clinked whenever someone passed by and dropped change without stopping. Sometimes the generosity came with a smile, more often, it came without a glance, as if giving him money excused the guilt of ignoring him. But Miguel didn't mind. He wasn't there to beg, he was there to sing. And he sang for one reason: his mother. She was sick, an illness that came with fevers and weakness, the kind that medicine could ease but poverty made impossible to treat. Miguel's voice was his only way to fight back against the helplessness. Every coin he earned, every peso he collected, went toward buying the little packets of medicine that helped his mother get through the night. When people asked him why he sang, his answer was always the same: for Mama. The late afternoon sun pressed heavy on the street. Sweat trickled down Miguel's forehead, but he didn't stop. His thin fingers moved with practiced grace over the strings, the guitar almost an extension of his body, his head tilted back slightly, his eyes closed, not in despair, but in surrender to the music. The crowd around him shifted constantly. Some stayed only for a moment before rushing off to catch a ride home. Others lingered, drawn by curiosity. A few children gathered, sitting cross-legged on the ground, watching with wide eyes. To them, Miguel was both ordinary and extraordinary, just another boy from the neighborhood, and yet someone who seemed touched by something divine. At one point, a man in a business suit passed by, clearly late for a meeting. His phone pressed to his ear. He almost didn't notice Miguel. But then he paused, turned his head, and for a moment forgot the world he was hurrying toward. He slipped a folded bill into the tin can, nodded once without a word, and continued on his way. Miguel didn't see the gesture, of course, but he heard the sound of the paper bill sliding against the metal, and he smiled faintly. There were moments like that, moments that reminded him that people still cared, even if most of the time the world felt indifferent. Still, Miguel's life was far from easy. Nights were often spent hungry. His mother, too weak to work, sometimes went without meals so Miguel could eat. Their little shack on the edge of the city offered no comforts, no luxuries. And yet, each morning she would encourage him: go sing and act. Your voice is a blessing, share it. And so, Miguel sang. As the day stretched into evening, the golden hour light warmed his skin. He could not see the sunset, but he could feel the world quiet slightly, as if even the city paused to listen. He sang one of his mother's favorite songs, a melody she used to hum when she still had strength. His voice cracked slightly with emotion, and a hush seemed to fall over those passing by. In that moment, Miguel was not just a poor blind boy on the street, he was a vessel of something greater: hope, love, sacrifice. His voice told the story of countless children like him, of families struggling silently in the shadows of busy cities. And though he couldn't see it, as his final note lingered in the air, one woman stood frozen at the edge of the crowd. A stranger, a tourist from a distant land. Her eyes shimmered with tears. She had come to Manila to see the sights, but what she found on that street corner was something far more powerful than any landmark. Miguel, unaware of the gaze fixed upon him, simply lowered his head, whispered "Salamat po" to the few who had given coins, and prepared to sing again. For him, it was just another day. For her, it was the beginning of something life-changing. The crowd around Miguel eventually thinned, as it always did. People drifted away, back to their buses, their dinners, their homes. The sound of the city swelled again, swallowing up his music like the ocean swallows a pebble tossed into the waves. But one person did not leave. She stood quietly, hands clutching a small camera bag against her side, her eyes locked on the boy who sang with so much heart. Her name was Emily. She was from Chicago, a teacher on a short trip to Manila. For days she had explored the city, ticking off tourist attractions from her guidebook: Intramuros, Rizal Park, the markets of Divisoria. Yet none of those places had stirred her the way this small street corner did. Emily had stopped because of the voice. Because something in the boy's song had reached into her chest and squeezed her heart. She noticed the way his fingers, though small and thin, moved with confidence over the battered guitar. She noticed his eyes, closed, unfocused, with that telltale blankness that spoke of blindness. And she noticed the tin can at his feet, holding only a handful of coins, barely enough for a simple meal. When the last note faded into the air, Emily stepped forward. "Hi there," she said softly, crouching down to his level so as not to frighten him. Miguel tilted his head toward her voice, a little startled but polite. "Good evening, Po. You sing beautifully," Emily said, her throat tightening with emotion. He smiled shyly, ducking his head. "Thank you, ma'am." "Why do you sing out here?" she asked gently. For a moment, Miguel hesitated. Strangers didn't usually ask questions like that. Most of the time they just walked by. But something in her voice, kind, sincere, made him answer. "I sing for Mama," he said. His voice was soft but steady. "She's sick. I buy her medicine with the money I make here." Emily's heart clenched. This boy, no older than 12, was carrying a burden most adults couldn't bear. She swallowed hard, blinking back tears. "How old are you?" she asked. 12, Miguel replied. "Almost 13. And you've been singing out here for a long time?" He nodded, his fingers brushing the strings of the guitar absent-mindedly. "Since I was little. Mama says my voice is a gift from God. She says even if I cannot see, I can still make people feel." Emily felt a lump in her throat. She wanted to reach out, to hug him, to take away all the weight he carried. But instead, she asked, "Do you go to school?" Miguel shook his head. "Not anymore, we don't have money for that. But I read with my ears," he added quickly, proud. "There's a man at church who lends me audiobooks." That simple sentence nearly undid her. A child robbed of education, of sight, of stability, yet still eager, still proud of what little he had. Emily knew she couldn't just walk away, not this time. "May I record you singing?" she asked. "I want to share your voice with people back home." Miguel tilted his head curiously. "Record me?" "Yes," Emily said with a smile he couldn't see. "Your music is too beautiful to stay on this street. More people should hear it." He thought about it for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, ma'am." Emily took out her phone, her hands trembling slightly. She hit the record button as Miguel lifted the guitar again. He strummed, finding his rhythm, and then began to sing. This time, Emily listened not just with her ears but with her soul. His voice was unlike anything she had ever heard. Fragile and yet powerful, carrying both pain and hope in equal measure. The world around them blurred. She no longer heard the honking cars or the vendors shouting. She heard only Miguel. When he finished, Emily was crying. She didn't bother to hide it. "That was incredible," she whispered. Miguel smiled faintly. "Thank you, ma'am." Emily pressed her hand against her chest, steadying herself. She knew deep down that this was more than a street performance. This was a message. This was a boy who deserved to be heard. That night, when she returned to her hotel, Emily uploaded the video to social media. She wrote a caption that came straight from her heart. "Today I met a 12-year-old blind boy named Miguel on the streets of Manila. He sings not for fame but to buy medicine for his sick mother. His voice is one of the most soulful I've ever heard. Please listen, share and help me spread his gift to the world." She hesitated before hitting post. Would anyone care? Would the world stop scrolling long enough to listen? But she thought of Miguel's words, "For Mama," and she pressed share. Within hours, the video began to spread. "Conan, this boy's voice gave me chills. How can we help him? I'm crying. Thank you for posting this." By morning, the video had millions of views. News outlets picked it up. People from around the world asked how they could donate, how they could support. But the biggest surprise came when Emily's inbox lit up with a message carrying the official logo of America's Got Talent. They had seen Miguel's video, and they wanted him to audition. Back on the streets of Manila, Miguel had no idea. That evening, he sat once again on his little wooden stool, strumming the same battered guitar, singing to the same passing strangers. He did not know that across oceans, across continents, his voice had already touched hearts far beyond the streets he knew. For him, it was just another day of singing for Mama. For the world, it was the beginning of something extraordinary. And for Emily, the stranger who had chosen not to walk away, it was proof that sometimes, one small act of kindness can change the course of a life forever. The morning sun leaked through the cracks of the thin wooden walls of Miguel's home. Their little house sat at the edge of Manila's crowded slums, barely more than a shack with rusted tin sheets for a roof. It was cramped, it was hot, and when it rained, water dripped steadily into pots they kept on the floor. Yet for Miguel, it was home. It was where his mother's gentle voice hummed him awake, where he felt the warmth of her hand guiding him, and where music filled the silence of their hardest nights. That morning, however, the silence was different. Miguel sat cross-legged on the floor, strumming his guitar softly while his mother lay on a cot nearby. She had been weak for days. Her cough rattled through the room, each one a reminder of how fragile she had become. But when Miguel played, she always smiled weakly but genuinely. "Anak," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath, "you play like the angels." Miguel smiled though worry weighed heavily on his chest. "It's for you, Mama. Always for you." They had just finished a simple breakfast, just rice, nothing more, when a knock came at the door. Miguel's mother frowned. "Who could that be?" she murmured. Visitors were rare. Miguel carefully felt his way toward the door, cane in one hand, his small fingers fumbling with the latch. He opened it, and the world seemed to tilt. On the other side stood Emily, the foreigner he had met only days before. But she wasn't alone. 2 local volunteers were with her, smiling warmly. Miguel recognized her voice instantly. "Hello, Miguel," she said softly. "May I come in?" Miguel's face lit up.
"Ma'am."
Yes, please." Emily entered, crouching by his mother's side. She spoke with gentle respect, introducing herself properly. "I met your son while he was singing. His voice, it touched my heart. I posted a video of him online," and she paused, taking a deep breath. "Something incredible has happened." Miguel tilted his head, confused. "What do you mean, ma'am?" Emily pulled out her phone. She played the video she had recorded, the one of Miguel singing on the street. He heard his own voice filling their tiny home, clearer than he'd ever heard it before. His mother's eyes widened, tears spilling as she watched strangers' comments flash across the screen. "Millions of people have seen this," Emily said. "They're asking about you, they want to help." And she stopped, her voice breaking with emotion. "America's Got Talent reached out. They want you to audition." For a moment, the room was silent. Miguel thought he had misheard. He clutched his guitar tightly, as if holding on to reality. "Audition," he whispered. Emily nodded. "Yes, Miguel. They want you to fly to America, to sing on their stage." His mother gasped, pressing her hand to her mouth. Her frail body trembled, her eyes wide with disbelief. "America's Got Talent," she repeated in awe. She had seen clips on neighbors' televisions before, watching ordinary people become stars overnight. But never, not in her wildest dreams, did she think her blind son from the streets would be called. Miguel's lips trembled, he shook his head slowly. No, I can't." Emily frowned gently. "Why not?" "I can't even see the stage," Miguel whispered, his voice breaking. "What if I trip? What if people laugh? I'm just a poor boy with a broken guitar." His words were heavy with fear, with years of being overlooked, with the weight of poverty pressing down on him. But then, his mother reached out her trembling hand and found his. Her grip was weak, but her voice carried strength she didn't know she still had. "Mijo," she said firmly, "you don't need eyes to be seen. God's voice will guide you." A tears blurred Emily's vision as she watched the boy bow his head, clutching his mother's hand. "But Mama," Miguel said softly, "what if I fail?" His mother smiled through her tears. "Then you fail with courage. But what if you succeed, Anak? What if the world finally hears you?" Silence hung heavy in the small shack, broken only by the sound of his mother's labored breathing. Miguel's heart pounded. Deep down, he longed to believe her words. But the fear of stepping beyond the only world he had known was overwhelming. Emily placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Miguel, I know it's scary, but I promise you won't be alone. I'll help you. Others will help you. You have a gift that can change lives. Don't let fear keep it hidden." Miguel's small hands tightened on his guitar. His throat ached with the pressure of unshed tears. He remembered the nights he sang his mother to sleep, the coins he collected in his dented tin can, the countless times people walked past without noticing him. And now the world was calling. He inhaled shakily. "If I do this," he whispered, "it will be for Mama." His mother's tears spilled freely, and she drew him close, kissing the top of his head. "Always for Mama, but also for you, Anak, for the boy who sings like the angels." Emily's smile trembled with emotion. "Then it's decided. We'll start preparing. Miguel, you're going to America. For the first time in years." Hope filled the little shack like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The future was uncertain. The journey would not be easy. But in that moment, Miguel felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He felt seen. And though he could not see the stage waiting for him thousands of miles away, in his heart, he could already hear it, the echo of his voice rising in an arena full of strangers who would finally listen. The roar of the crowd inside the America's Got Talent arena was unlike anything Miguel had ever heard. He stood just behind the stage curtains, his cane in one hand, his battered guitar slung over his small shoulder. The lights were so bright that even through the darkness of his blindness, he could feel their warmth on his skin. The air buzzed with energy, cheers, chatter, the rustling of thousands of people waiting for the next act. Miguel's heart pounded so loudly he thought the whole world could hear it. His hands were clammy, his knees trembling. He tightened his grip on the guitar, afraid it might slip. Beside him Emily crouched low, her voice gentle in his ear. "Remember what your mama said, you don't need eyes to be seen, just sing, Miguel. Sing the way you always do." Miguel nodded, though fear still wrapped around him like chains. Then came the cue. The stage hand touched his shoulder, signaling it was time. Every step onto that stage felt like stepping into another universe. The floor beneath his worn shoes vibrated with the hum of cameras and electricity. The crowd hushed, curiosity rippling across the arena as they saw the small boy with a cane making his way to the center. He stopped where Emily had carefully guided him during rehearsals, then lifted his face slightly. Sensing the lights shining down from the judges' panel, 4 pairs of eyes studied him: Howie Mandel, Heidi Klum, Sofia Vergara and Simon Cowell. They exchanged quick glances. A child, blind, with an old, broken guitar, nobody knew what to expect. Simon leaned forward, adjusting his microphone. "Hello there," he said, his tone calm but intrigued. "What's your name?" Miguel gripped the microphone with both hands. His voice trembled. "My name is Miguel." "How old are you, Miguel?" Sophia asked warmly. "I'm 12, he answered. "Almost 13. Hey, what are you going to do for us today?" Heidi asked, her voice gentle. Miguel swallowed hard. I will sing, and play guitar." The audience murmured softly. Some skeptical, some curious. Simon tilted his head. "And why did you choose to audition for America's Got Talent?" Miguel hesitated. His throat tightened, but he forced the words out. "I sing for my mama. She is very sick. I want her to hear me on a big stage. I want her to be proud." The arena fell silent. Even the judges softened, their expressions shifting. There was something in his tone, humility, love, courage that pierced through the noise. Simon gave a small nod. "All right, Miguel, we're ready when you are." Miguel adjusted his guitar. His fingers found the strings, trembling at first, then steadying. The crowd held its breath, and then, he began to sing. The first note floated into the air like a prayer. His voice, though young, carried a depth far beyond his years. It was soulful, raw, tender. Each lyric spilled from his heart as if it had been waiting all along for this very moment. The arena, moments ago buzzing with noise, grew utterly still. Even the cameras seemed to lean closer, capturing every tremor in his voice. He sang about love, about sacrifice, about carrying burdens too heavy for small shoulders. He sang of nights spent alone in darkness, yet finding light in the love of a mother. Simon's eyes widened slightly. His face, usually stern and guarded, softened as the song unfolded. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, his lips parted in awe. Howie shook his head slowly, whispering, "Unbelievable." Heidi pressed her hand against her chest, tears welling in her eyes, and Sophia, always expressive, wiped her cheeks as the boy's voice cracked with emotion on a high note that seemed to cut straight through the soul. The audience erupted into applause midway, but Miguel kept going, pouring every ounce of himself into the song. He couldn't see the standing ovations rising around him, couldn't see the tears streaking down strangers' faces. But he could feel it. He could feel the energy shift, the warmth of thousands of hearts beating with his. When the final note rang out, Miguel held it just long enough to let the silence sink in, and then, it ended. For a moment, the arena was completely silent, and then, the crowd exploded. Cheers thundered, people leapt to their feet. The sound was deafening. Miguel, startled, flinched slightly, his hands gripping the guitar. He wasn't sure what was happening. But then he heard it, thousands of voices chanting his name. "Miguel, Miguel." He felt his chest tighten, tears rising unbidden. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "For Mama." Backstage, Emily covered her mouth, sobbing as she watched the scene unfold. And just beyond the curtain, Miguel's mother sat in a wheelchair, her frail body trembling as tears streamed down her cheeks. "That's my boy," she whispered. "That's my Miguel." On the judges' panel, Simon leaned into his mic. His voice was low, but filled with emotion. "Miguel, I've been doing this show a long time. And sometimes, once in a while, a voice like yours comes along. A voice that reminds us all why we're here. You don't just sing, you make people feel, and I think the world needs to hear you." The arena roared again. And then it happened. Simon reached forward, his hand hovering over the golden button that sat at the center of the judge's desk. The crowd went wild, screaming, knowing what was coming. With a firm press, Simon slammed his hand down. The golden buzzer exploded. Golden confetti burst from the ceiling, showering the stage in shimmering rain. The audience screamed even louder, the energy electrifying. Miguel dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. His tiny hands clutching his guitar as confetti brushed against his hair and shoulders. He trembled, whispering again through tears, "For Mama. For Mama." Backstage, his mother wept uncontrollably, hands pressed to her face. Emily hugged her tightly, both women crying, both knowing this moment would change Miguel's life forever. On stage, Miguel tilted his face upward, blind eyes searching for the confetti he could not see but could feel landing on his skin. His tears mixed with laughter, his body shaking with emotion. For the first time in his life, he was not just a boy on the streets, he was not just a voice lost in the noise of a busy city, he was a star. And as the golden rain fell, Miguel realized that his mother had been right all along. He didn't need eyes to be seen, his voice had shown the world who he was. The golden confetti still clung to Miguel's hair and shoulders as the stage lights dimmed. The thunder of the audience's cheers echoed in his ears long after the music had stopped. Backstage, the crew guided him gently offstage, his small hands still gripping his battered guitar. His knees trembled, his chest heaved, and yet, his heart soared. Miguel had never seen confetti rain down. He had never seen an audience rise to their feet, but he could feel it. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing against him, wrapping him in warmth. He could hear the chants of strangers shouting his name, their voices filled with something he had rarely received in his young life: respect. "For Mama," he whispered again, clutching his guitar tightly to his chest. And then, his mother was there. They wheeled her forward, and Emily gently helped her to her feet. Despite her frail body, Miguel's mother stumbled into her son's arms, holding him as tightly as her weak limbs could manage. Her tears soaked his shirt as she whispered over and over, "I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you." Miguel's small hands clung to her as though letting go might wake him from a dream. "Mama," he sobbed, "I did it, we did it." Emily stood beside them, wiping her own tears, overwhelmed by the moment. She had been the stranger who stopped on a Manila street corner. She had been the one to press record, to hit, share. And now, watching mother and son embrace under the weight of golden confetti, she realized the truth: this was never just about a song, it was about hope. Over the next days, Miguel's performance became a sensation. Clips of his audition spread across the internet, shared by millions. People from every corner of the globe commented, "This boy's voice is heaven sent. He made me cry, and I don't even know him. This is why I believe in miracles." Talk shows replayed his audition. News outlets covered his story. Celebrities tweeted about him. But through it all, Miguel remained the same: a boy who sang for his mother. Producers arranged interviews where Miguel would sit nervously, his guitar on his lap, answering questions in his soft, humble voice. "Why do you sing?" they asked again and again, and his answer never changed. "For Mama." But the most profound change happened quietly, away from the cameras. For the first time in years, Miguel's mother was able to receive proper medical care. Donations poured in from around the world, enough to pay for medicine, checkups, and even better living conditions. She grew stronger little by little, able to walk without as much pain, able to smile without as much fear. Their tiny shack in Manila was soon replaced with a modest but safe home, with clean water, electricity, and a bed that no longer sagged to the floor. To Miguel, it felt like stepping into another universe. He would run his small hands over the smooth walls, marveling at the feel of tiles beneath his feet. "It smells different, Mama," he said one evening. "It smells safe." And his mother, holding his hand, whispered, "Yes, and act safe, finally safe." Yet even with these blessings, Miguel never stopped singing on street corners when he returned home between AGT tapings. Not for money anymore, but for love, for the people who had once passed him by, for the children who sat cross-legged on the ground, watching him with wide eyes. One evening, a little boy tugged at Miguel's sleeve after a song. Miguel," he asked shyly, "can I sing like you one day?" Miguel knelt down, his blind eyes turning toward the voice. He smiled. "Of course you can. You don't need to see to dream, you just need heart." The boy's face lit up, and in that moment, Miguel understood that his gift wasn't just about music. It was about planting seeds of hope in others. When it was time for the AGT live shows, Miguel returned to America, guided by Emily and supported by his mother. The journey was still hard, he still battled nerves, still fought fear. But every time he stepped onto that stage, he carried the same truth inside him: he wasn't singing for fame, he was singing for love. And that love resonated. Each performance was more powerful than the last, each note reminding the world that greatness doesn't come from what you have, but from what you give. By the time the finals arrived, Miguel had become more than a contestant. He had become a symbol, a reminder of resilience, faith, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. The night of the finale, when the results were announced, Miguel held his mother's hand tightly. He didn't win first place, but it didn't matter. Because in truth, Miguel had already won. He had won a community of millions who believed in him. He had won a future where his mother could live without constant fear of sickness. He had won the chance to share his gift with the world. And as the applause echoed one final time, Simon leaned over his microphone and said words that Miguel would carry for the rest of his life. "Miguel, you may not have taken the trophy tonight, but you've taken something far greater. You've taken the hearts of everyone watching, and that is worth more than any prize. A month later, back in Manila, Miguel sat outside his new home with his mother beside him. The sun was setting, though he could not see it. He strummed his guitar softly, humming a melody. His mother leaned her head on his shoulder, her strength slowly returning. "You've changed everything, Anak," she whispered. "Not just for us, for so many." Miguel smiled faintly, his fingers dancing over the strings. "No, Mama, it wasn't me, it was everyone who listened, everyone who cared." The neighborhood children gathered, as they always did, sitting in a circle to hear him sing. His voice rose once again into the air, gentle yet powerful, carrying across the streets that had once been his stage of survival. Now it was a stage of celebration, because Miguel's story was no longer just about hardship, it was about transformation. It was about the power of kindness from a stranger, the strength of a mother's love, and the unshakable belief that even in darkness, light can shine. And so, the blind boy who once sang for coins beneath the noise of a city now sang for something greater. He sang for hope, he sang for love, he sang for every heart still waiting to be heard, for Mama, for the world, for all of